in moments when the inner lamps are lit and life's cherished guests are left outside, our spirit sits alone and speaks to its ghost. A treasure of honey in the combs of God, a splendor burning in a tenebrous cloak. It is our glory of the flame of God, our golden fountain of the world's delight.
53.
An immortality coiled in the cape of death,
No, it's
the shape of our unborn
it'll start at
divinity.
280.
along a path of eons serpentine, in the coiled blackness of her nascent core, the earth goddess toils across the sands of time.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 1, the Book of Beginnings, and we're in Canto 4, The Secret Knowledge. Page 53, we'll be starting at line 280. But I will review a little bit from where we've come. In the early couple of cantos, we were introduced to Savitri. And in Canto 2, we were introduced to the issue for which she has come. So there he says, "For this she had accepted mortal breath, to wrestle with the shadow she had come, and must confront the riddle of man's birth, and life's brief struggle in dumb matter's night. Whether to bear with ignorance and death, or hew the ways of immortality, to win or lose the godlike game for man, was her soul's issue thrown with destiny's dice." And then in Canto 3, we backtrack to before her birth, and Sri Aurobindo tells us in the first lines of Canto 3 that a world's desire compelled her mortal birth. And then he says, "One in the front of the immemorial quest, protagonist of the mysterious play, in which the unknown pursues himself through forms and limits his eternity by the hours, and the blind void struggles to live and see. A thinker and toiler in the ideal's air, brought down to earth's dumb need her radiant power." And that is, in a way, the introduction to her father, to King Aswapati. So in that canto, Canto 3, we're introduced to King Aswapati's yoga, his spiritual realization. And right from the beginning, we see that he exceeds all kind of human measures and goes far beyond into the higher spiritual consciousness. And we're given a glimpse, a good look at his spiritual realizations that he has. And we see it's also an integral realization. It's not simply a release into the transcendent consciousness, kind of a liberation from the world, but there is also a transformation going on in his nature, of his mind and life and body. And then in Canto 4, there is kind of a pause in the description of the action of the poem. We take a break from description of Savitri and of King Aswapati, and we're given a view from the narrator of the poem of the knowledge that King Aswapati has gained, has realized. And there are, in the beginning of what we've gone through so far, several aspects to that knowledge. And I'm just going to read a few short passages that outline these different elements of what he's realized. On page 46, in the middle, he understands that a death-bound littleness is not all we are. Immortal, our forgotten vastnesses, await discovery in our summit selves. Unmeasured breadth and depth of being are ours. So that is one aspect, that what we see here of ourselves is not all we are, that we have an inner and a higher consciousness, which yet is kind of veiled from our sight. He says, in moments when the inner lamps are lit and life's cherished guests are left outside, our spirit sits alone and speaks to its gulfs. A wider consciousness opens then its doors, invading from spiritual silences. A ray of the timeless glory stoops a while to commune with our seized, illumined clay, and leaves its huge white stamp upon our lives. So he's saying that sometimes if we go deep within, kind of leave the outer guests, the outer things of life behind, and go within, this wider consciousness can open up within us. And he describes different ways that this higher consciousness may manifest in us, different ways that we may experience it. He says on page 48, the truth mind could not know unveils its face. We hear what mortal ears have never heard. We feel what earthly sense has never felt. We love what common hearts repel and dread. Our minds hush to a bright omniscient. A voice calls from the chambers of the soul. We meet the ecstasy of the Godhead's touch in golden privacies of immortal fire. So those are experiences that may come to us in meditation when we turn within. But then he goes back and says that these experiences don't come so easily. And normally, our view of life, of our existence, is quite different. So I'll read a short passage of that at the break on page 49. He says, "But all is screened, subliminal, mystical. It needs the intuitive heart, the inward turn. It needs the power of a spiritual gaze." And then he gives our normal view of our life. "Else to our waking mind small moment look, a goalless voyage seems our dubious course. Some chance has settled or hazarded some will, or a necessity without aim or cause, unwillingly compelled to emerge and be. In this dense field where nothing is plain or sure, our very being seems to us questionable, our life a vague experiment, the soul a flickering light in a strange, ignorant world, the earth a brute mechanic accident, a net of death in which by chance we live. And then the last aspect is that there is some kind of yearning within this kind of darkness for something greater, for some kind of completion of our being. He says towards the end of page 50, "In her unconscious orbit through the void, out of her mindless depths, she strives to rise. A perilous life, her gain, a struggling joy, a thought that can conceive but hardly knows, arises slowly in her and creates the idea, the speech that labels more than it lights, a trembling gladness that is less than bliss, invades from all this beauty that must die. Alarmed by the sorrow dragging at her feet, and conscious of the high things not yet won, ever she nurses in her sleepless breast an inward urge that takes from her rest and peace. Ignorant and weary and invincible, she seeks through the soul's war and quivering pain the pure perfection her marred nature needs, a breath of Godhead on her stone and mire." So that gives us kind of a view of the knowledge that he's describing so far, that Asvapati has understood. There's kind of maybe one last aspect that is just described in just before we broke off last time. And it's like he's saying that normally our eyes are turned on the external world, and we don't see where life is going, where it's headed. And yet, if we would look within, a kind of a foreknowledge or an intuitive understanding of things could come. So he describes that on the bottom of page 52 and page 53. And now we begin on line 280. And would you like to read?
Only the immortals on their deathless heights, dwelling beyond the walls of time and space, masters of living, free from the bonds of thought, who are overseers of fate and chance and will, and experts of the theorem of world being, can see the idea, the might that changed time's course, come maned with light from undiscovered worlds. Here, while the world toils on with its deep blind heart, the galloping hooves of the unforeseen event, bearing the superhuman rider, near and impassive to earth's din and startled cry, return to the silence of the hills of God. As lightning leaps, as thunder sweeps, they pass and leave their mark on the trampled breast of life.
Thank you. So Sri Aurobindo is saying that our sight is limited, to the surface of things. We can't see into the past. We can't see into the future. But there are immortal beings kind of looking down upon this world that do see and understand the whole picture of the life. Dwelling beyond the walls of time and space. And they are the overseers of fate and chance and will. All those things which we see kind of operating in life but really don't understand what they are in a deeper sense. But they are the overseers of those. And they can see the idea, the might that changed time's course. Commined with light from undiscovered worlds, here while the world toils on with its deep-lined heart, the galloping hooves of the unforeseen event, bearing the superhuman rider near. So a greater light idea and a greater might can come down from these higher realms and change time's course, change the way things are going. And they witness that happening. They see the galloping hooves of the unforeseen event. What is this unforeseen event?
Excuse me, come, line 286. Come maimed with light from undiscovered worlds. Who comes maimed? Maimed is like the horse hair, no?
Yeah.
Lion.
So who comes maimed?
The idea and the might, I think.
So this is the superhuman rider.
Yeah.
So
He
it's,
compares with the horse.
it seems to be referring to Kalki, no? Who's riding the horse.
That could be.
So now you see the Kalki avatars here being, the rider.
The white horse
Yeah.
represents divine force,
The Kalki
and the sword
avatars.
is divine knowledge. I mean, this knowledge.
This idea and might also may be, referring to the supramental consciousness and force.
Because it's beyond space and time.
Coming from undiscovered worlds. The superhuman rider. Maybe that's the future being, this future supramental being that is coming. And then, impassive to earth's din and startled cry. So they're not moved by the noise happening on earth and the cry of the earth, all the kind of upsetting events that we see unfolding around us even now. They are not moved by these things because they're looking through long spaces of time. They see the whole sequence of events in one view. So they see the superhuman rider come, kind of upsetting everything here on earth, and then return to the silence of the hills of God. And as lightning leaps, as thunder sweeps, they pass and leave their mark on the trampled breast of life. So something comes down, powerful, upsets things, and returns back to the silence, but leaving its mark on the trampled breast of life. Would you like to continue? Go ahead.
Above the world creator's time, in the phenomenon see its mystic source. It is heed not the receiving outward play, they turn not to the moment's busy tramp, but listen with the still patience of the unborn. For the slow footsteps of far destiny, approaching through huge distances of time, unmarked by the eye that sees effect and cause, unheard mid the clamor of the human play. Attentive to the unseen truth they seize, a sound as of invisible hour winds, voices of an unformed significance, mutterings that brood in the core of matter's sleep. In the heart's profound audition they can catch the murmurs lost by life's uncaring ear, a prophet's speech in thought's omniscient trance.
Thank you. Let's pause there. This kind of continues the same basic idea that above the world there are these immortal beings. Here he calls them world creators. And in the phenomena, the events of life here on earth, they see the source from which they come. We don't see the sources, and we don't see the results, where it's headed. We only see kind of all the agitation going on in the moment. But they see it all. And so they heed not the deceiving outward play. The outward play of events in the world can be deceptive, can be deceiving if we don't understand what it's leading towards or where it's coming from. And they listen with the still patience of the unborn. Again, they're immortal. For the slow footsteps of far destiny they're waiting for that future event, that superhuman rider, that superhuman being coming on earth, the destiny of the world, approaching through huge distances of time. We're all caught up in the moment in our brief lives. What's going to happen next month, next year?
A tramp is a beggar. Tramp.
Tramp? Where? Oh, busy? No. Well, here it's not that. Here it's like, it's kind of a marching through mud or something. It's, this kind of a difficult kind of forward walking.
Trampling, trample.
Yeah. So they're quietly, patiently waiting for the future, things to come. They're attentive to an unseen truth. They seize a sound as of invisible augur wings. Augur is a foreteller of events, especially by omens, looking for omens of what will come. Voices of an unplumbed significance. Voices, mutterings that brood in the core of matter's sleep. Mutterings are kind of indistinct sounds that are arising from the earth, from the depths of life. But in those mutterings, something may be revealed. Maybe this kind of seeking for something higher. Turia, would you continue?
About the illusion of the hopes that pass, behind the appearance and the overt act, behind the clockwork chance and vague surmise, amid the wrestling of force, the trampling feet, across the cries of anguish and of joy, across the triumph, fighting in despair, they watch the bliss for which earth's heart has cried, on the long road which cannot see its end, winding undetected through the septic days, and to me it guides the unheedful moving world. Thus will the masked transcendent mount his throne. When darkness deepens, strangling the earth's breast, and man's corporeal mind is the only lamp, as a thief in the night shall be the covered tread of one who steps unseen into his house. A voice ill-heard shall speak, the soul obey, the power into mind's inner chamber steal, the charm and sweetness open life's closed doors, and beauty conquer the resisting world. The truth light capture nature by surprise. The stealth of God compel the heart to bliss, and earth grow unexpectedly divine. In matter shall be the spirit's glow, in body and body kindled the sacred earth. Night shall wake to the anthem of the stars, the days become a happy pilgrim march. Auroville the force of the eternal's power, and thought the rays of the spiritual sun. The few shall see what none yet understands. God shall pour up while the wise men walk and see. For man shall not know the coming till its hour, and belief shall not be till the work is done.
Thank you. So these immortals standing above the world, play, watching, unmoved by the anguish, the suffering, the turmoil here. Yet, he says, they watch for the bliss for which earth's heart has cried. And to meet it, guide the unheedful moving world. So they don't just stand up above watching without caring. They see to where it's going, where it's moving towards, and they're guiding it towards its great destiny of bliss. The bliss for which earth's heart has cried. So they're also guiding. And then comes one of the most powerful passages in the whole poem. Thus will the mass transcendent mount his throne. So while on earth darkness deepens, our physical bodily mind is the only light we have to see. As the thieves in the night shall be the covert tread of one who steps unseen into his house. Who's coming into his house? This masked transcendent, this hidden transcendent. He's going to step into the house, just like a thief in the night. And then a voice ill heard shall speak, the soul obey. Suddenly, from within, he will begin to act within us. A power into mind's inner chamber steal. Steal means kind of enter surreptitiously. A charm and sweetness open life's doors, close doors, and beauty conquer the resisting world. The truth light capture nature by surprise. A stealth of God compel the heart to bliss, and earth grow unexpectedly divine. And we see even in matter shall be lit the Spirit's glow. In body and body kindle the sacred birth. The divine, the birth of the divinity in this body, that body. That divine soul will awake, be born. Mm. Mm. Yeah, and maybe a new type of being will be born.
Sacred birth. No?
Mm.
Because up to now, the birth is not sacred.
Mm.
The soul is being reborn in an animal body,
Mm.
which is coming out from the inconscient deep, unsacred. So that when the corporeal mind or the body, the matter,
Changes.
awakens,
Mm.
then the soul need not go through an animal birth anymore.
The divine beings will be born.
But still from matter.
And interestingly also, I mean, it's also us. Our will, a force of the Eternal's power, and thought, the rays of a spiritual sun. It's also a transformation happening in humanity, in us. It's not just somebody, some divine being new coming.
I think it's the divinization of matter. The body becoming divinized. Plus, humans have such a thing to postpone everything to the next thing rather than accepting it oneself, by oneself, that it is our duty or it is our transformation. We put it on the next. We see they will do it.
Yeah.
So I feel
We need to participate also. Or we have the opportunity to participate.
Because we've always been part of the play.
Mm.
We are not separate from the play. We are the play.
But it's quite interesting of how this all just kind of happens unforeseen in almost a kind of a surprising, miraculous way. God shall grow up while the wise men talk and sleep. For man shall not know the coming till its hour, and belief shall be not till the work is done. Because he's been saying, normally we're all hypnotized by the outer world, by the outer things, the small events of our lives, our little cares. So we can't see what's coming. We could if we would turn within, listen carefully, but normally we don't. And so these things will come, nevertheless, whether we're aware or not.
But Marie Curie wrote some book, The End Before Dying, The Work Will Be Done. C'est-à-dire, dans mauvais usine, je prends mon album. Working in everywhere in the world. You see or not, but every place, everything.
I think this term means that people who are open and conscious of what is coming will be able to understand. And not if you are not open to a new consciousness, you will not be able to know. Just as Canto and consciousness descended. Many people who are not aware that it actually came. And that's the answer. Anything, only if you are open to it, you will know. It's your receptivity.
But still, we don't know when it's going to happen. That's why we will and aspire. But the final, when it's going to happen, only the divine knows when it's going to happen.
I personally live in hope to see better days. And that hope is a very powerful thing. It keeps me going every day to do better for myself.
Yeah, that's what Sri Aurobindo has given us, this hope at least, that this greater thing is coming. Otherwise it would be quite dismal, no?
Because there's so much warning, no? When darkness deepens, so expect a lot of turmoil happening, which is already happening, even within Auroville, no?
I think one of the hope is the faith that we should have.
Faith is kind of a knowledge that deep within comes from our soul. Shall we continue? Would you like to read? Oh, we haven't read? So, okay. Then, see, normally what we do is we read through first without commentary, and then we go back and comment. So we read just the first part of this through and now have commented as well. But now we can read through the next section. And then we can return again to commentary. So, Sudanya, you could.
A consciousness that knows not its own truth, a background hunter of misleading gods. Between the waves, dark and luminous waves, moves here in a hot light that seals the way. I think in reality, cut out the integral thoughts of little balls, the circles that stands in deep into space, doubtful of its beginning and its close. A runs upon a lake that has no end. All from the original dust, high and low. In some deeds born, in conscience it sleeps, like a thought's suspicion, the wide emptiness. As if an unintelligible place, suggesting a brilliance rendering to the mind, it names a partner to a random order. The conjecture dwelling upon doubtful truths and messages, misunderstood or confused. Missing its aim is all that it can speak, or a fragment of a universal word. It leads to giant British void of sense, while without sanction comes the people sign, carrying an enigmatic universe, as if a present without future or past, repeating the same revolution world, drawn on its axis on its own innate.
Thank you. Next, would you like to read? Ma'am, in the back? Yes. Okay, next? No? Sir, in the back, would you like to read? No? Okay, would you like to read? Thus is the meaning.
Thus is the meaning of creation when, for without context reads the cosmic page. Its signs stare at us like an unknown spirit, as if appeared screened by a foreign tongue, or a code of portion of a parable sublime. It wears to the perishable creature's eyes the grandeur of a useless miracle, wasting itself that it may last a while. A river that can never find its sea. It runs through life and death on the edge of time. A fire in the night is its mighty action's place. This is our deepest need to join once more. What now is parted, opposite and vague, remote in souvenir, sovereign, spheres that never meet, or fronting like far flows of night and day, we must fill the immense lacuna we have made. Rewet the most finite, lonely
Consonant.
with the open marvels of infinity. A hyphen must connect matter and mind. The narrow isthmus of the ascending circle. We must renew the spirit born in chains. Our hearts recall the lost divine idea. Reconstitute the perfect word, unite the Alpha and the Omega in one sound. Then shall the spirit and nature be at one.
Thank you. Ganga Lakshmi.
Twilights of mysterious plan. In the wide silence eclair of the Sabbath, in enchanting silence, white and new, aloof, resplendent like world dazzling suns. Veiled by the ray no mortal eyes can bear. The spirits bare and obsolete potencies, burning solitude of the thoughts of God. The rapture and radiance and the hush deliver from the approach of wooden earth, benign to the ideal that looks and breathes, removed from the force that cries out in its pain, in his inalienable bliss, they live. Immaculate in self-knowledge and self-power, calm, they repose on eternal way. Only his laws they come and him obey. They have no goal to reach, no end to serve.
Thank you. Next, sir, would you read?
In French, it will be a pleasure, but in English, it's a catastrophe. Sorry.
Okay, would you?
Invisible in their timeless purity, all matter of right of worship refuse. Unmoved by the cry of the world that is not prayer, they attain not our worship or our sin. They bend not to the voices that endure, they hold no traffic with error and its way. They are guardians of the silence of the truth. They are keepers of the invisible decree. A deep surrender in their source of mind. A still identity in their routine. Motionless in their action legacy. At peace, regarding the trouble beneath the stars. Deathless, watching the works of death and chance. Immobile, seeing the millenniums pass. Untouched, while the long map of fate unrolls. They look on our struggle with impartial eyes, and yet without which the cosmos could not be. Impervious to desire and room of hope, the station of environmental might. Moveless upholds the world's enormous task. Its ignorance is by far their knowledge lit. Its yearnings last by their indifference.
Thank you. Nitya, would you read?
harsh utility of death and decay, acquiescing in gradual steps of dying, careless they seem of the grief that stings the world's heart, careless of the pain that rends its body and life. Above joy and sorrow is that grandiose walk. They have no portion in the good that dies. Mute, pure, they shall not in evil die. Else might their strength be marred and could not save.
Thank you. Tim?
Alive to the truth that dwells in God's extremes, awake to emotion of all seeing causes, the slow outcome of the long and vigorous years, and the unexpected good from the woeful deeds. The immortal sees not as we vainly see. He looks on hidden aspects and screened out. He knows the law and natural line of things, undriven by the brief life's will to act, unharassed by the stern of pity and fear. He makes no haste to untie the cosmic knot, or the world's torn, jarring heart to reconcile. In time he waits for the eternal's hour, yet a spiritual secret, is there. While tiny evolution's coils wind on, and nature hews her way through animal, a divine intervention thrones above. Alive in a dead rotating universe, we will not here upon a casual globe, abandoned to a task beyond our force. Even through the tangled anarchy called fate, and through the bitterness of death and fall, an outstretched hand is felt upon our lives. It is near us in unnumbered bodies and birds, in its unslackening grasp it keeps for us safe. The one inevitable supreme result. No will can take away and no doing change. The crowd of conscious immortality. The Godhead promised to us struggling souls, when the first man's heart dared death and suffered life.
Thank you. Next.
One who has shaped this world is ever its Lord. Our errors are his steps upon the way. He goes through the fierce vicissitudes of our lives. He goes through the hard death of battle and fight. He goes through our sins and sorrows and our tears. His knowledge overrules our designs. Whatever the appearance, we must bear. Whatever our strong is and present fate. When nothing we can see but drift and wait, a mighty guidance leads us still through all. After we have served this great divided world, God's bliss and oneness are our inborn right. A date is fixed in the calendar of the unknown, an anniversary of the word sublime. Our soul shall testify its checkered walk. All will come near, that now is not or far. These calm and distant minds shall act at last, inwardly ready for their distant task. The ever-wise, compassionate brilliance await the sound of the incarnate spirits, to lead and bridge the charms of ignorance, and heal the hollow, yawning gulfs of life, and fill the abyss that is the universe.
Thank you. Next. Thank you. I think we'll go back and go through this passage again, slowly with commentary. Page 55 at the break. Helmut, would you? Oh, you want mine?
A consciousness that knows not its own truth, awakened unto of misleading dawns, between the being star and luminous ends, moves here in a half-light that seems to hold. An interregnum in reality cuts off the integral thought, the total power. It circles or stands in a wake into space, doubtful of its beginning and its close, or runs upon a road that has no end. Far from the original dusk, the final flame in some huge void inconscience it hits, like a thought persisting in a void emptiness. As if an unintelligible phrase suggests a million renderings to the mind, it lends purport to a random word. A conjecture leaning upon doubtful proofs, a message misunderstood, a thought confused, missing its aims is all that it can speak, or a fragment of the universal world.
Thank you. An interregnum. Well, it's kind of a lapse or a pause in general, but it has also a more specific meaning of it's the time in which a throne is vacant between two reigns or regimes. Well, that might be one example, but I don't know that he's referring to that here, a prelaya. He's talking about our kind of experience of the world now.
planet is very unsafe. Anything can happen. The king is there, another king is not there. Normally, everything explodes or can explode.
But in a very general sense, what he's describing here is our experience of life. We don't know where we're coming from. We don't know our origins. We don't know the origins of the forces and things that are operating here. And we don't know where it's going. So we're caught in this kind of middle ground with, our sight clipped off on either end. So, and we're cut off from the integral thought and the total power. We also are, cut off from the sources of real power, the divine power.
It is the interregnum that cuts off the integral thought.
I guess so. But it's also then kind of referring to that earlier consciousness that knows not its own truth. But then, that's like another aspect of it, or another way of looking at it, this interregnum in reality.
And vagrant means which errs, which wanders.
Wandering from place to place, a vagrant hunter. A vagrant is somebody who wanders from place to place kind of aimlessly. Yeah, we go after this, kind of interesting thing or that kind of interesting thing, and we go, and get caught up in this or that and different ideas, these misleading dawns that don't really end up leading us anywhere.
But it will lead to somewhere. Because you're still in the one itself.
Yeah.
The searching leads to somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not really irrelevant.
Yeah. But very
otherwise we won't be Homo sapiens, no? We will still be stoned.
This line, imagine this in the first page of line 11.
What?
Line 11.
What page?
First page. Between the first and last notice.
Mm.
Which page?
First page. He's going back to the beginning. Yeah, he talks there also about a power of fallen, boundless self awake between the first and the last nothingness. And here also he says, far from the original dusk, the final flame. That original dusk is also that inconscient beginning.
The play, that starts from zero. And goes back again like a circle.
So it's as if we're living in some huge void in conscience. like a thought persisting in a wide emptiness. Or as if some unintelligible phrase suggested a million different meanings to the mind. It lends a purport, a professed meaning, a certain meaning. We interpret the world as being a certain way. It seems kind of random, though. But it's a conjecture, leaning on doubtful proofs. We try to understand the best we can without knowing the origins of our thoughts or of ourselves or where we're going. We try our best. But it's a message misunderstood, a thought confused. And this next, you read, you continue, and then he kind of continues this image. It leaves two giant letters void of sense. I don't have it. Next.
Okay. It lives in two giant letters, void of sense, while without sign to turn and the sign, carrying an enigmatic universe, as if a present without future or past, repeating the same revolution wheel, turned on its axis in its own night. Thus is the meaning of creation. Without context, read the cosmic page. Its signs stare back like an unborn skin, as it appears clean by a foreign tongue or coat or splendor signs without a key or portion para the sublime. It wears to the patient and creature's eyes the grandeur of a useless book, wasting itself that it may last a while, a river that can never find sea. It runs through life and death on an edge of time. A fire of the night is its mighty action against.
Thank you. Let's stop. He's using these images of language to describe our situation of not knowing this origin or destiny, as if a word with 3 letters, kind of in the beginning and the first letter and the last letter are just completely unknown. And then in the middle, we try to understand, we interpret our life here, not knowing its beginning or its end. We try to render that middle term So while without sanction turns the middle sign, that middle letter, carrying the enigmatic universe. We try to explain the universe, but not knowing those two letters.
So the two letters are alpha.
Yeah, later he will say, on the next page, he says the alpha and omega reunite them into the perfect word. As if a present without future or past, we try to understand things. Thus is the meaning of creation veiled. For without context reads the cosmic page. Its signs stare at us like an unknown script, as if appeared screened by a foreign tongue, or a code of splendor signs without a key, without the key to the code. A portion of a parable sublime, as if it was this, very deep, sublime parable, but we only get a portion of it, so we can't really grasp it.
And the inane term means success in its own inane.
Yeah, inane, it's kind of a meaninglessness, but also it's an emptiness, a great emptiness. As if, kind of space is a little bit like that. It's kind of empty space. Our world is spinning in this emptiness without meaning.
In order to understand our present life and all this thing, to know the original thing also, then we understand this everything.
Otherwise, it seems the grandeur of a useless miracle. Our life, it's quite miraculous, quite amazing in some way, but we don't know where it's going or what use it is. Just to end up dying at the end.
Well, at least now we have an idea. With our guides,
Mm.
bringing this to us. And we have all sorts of instruments, Hubble telescope, electron microscope, particle collider. We've improved a lot, actually.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to be looking at almost the origins of time with the new telescope.
Yes, we have advanced quite a lot, actually.
Okay, we pause there for today. Do we have any music or anything?
Where did we stop?
In a lamp solid and the lights carried guests are left outside. Our spirit sits alone and speaks to its love. a treasure of honey in the combs of God, a splendor burning in a tenebrous cloak. It is our glory of the flame of God, our golden fountain of the world's delight. An immortality coiled in the cape of death, the shape of our unborn divinity. Along a path of eons serpentine, in the coiled blackness of her nascent core, the earth goddess toils across the sands of time.
Thanks to Shri Aurobindo.